Good morning, everyone. This is David with Bolivar Live. Well, like I said before, we're going to be streaming all day on the Bolivar Lighthouse, letting you see what's going on down here. Um, it's a big day in the lighthouse history. In fact, uh, the lighthouse was built in 1872. And so it's weathered storms, saved lives, and more. And I've always said it's an icon of beauty. Welcome, Matt, for those coming on to Bolivar for a weekend getaway, maybe a day trip, week long vacation, or just coming back home. And it's a farewell map for those that are leaving after a vacation, maybe just passing through, or maybe they've been to the Fort Travis. And that's where our webcam is today. And we're going to be following this all day today as they take the top off. In fact, you can barely see people up in the top of the lighthouse. And we're going to be streaming this live. You can see it on any of our social media channels. If we break away, if it takes some time, then we'll stream strictly to our Bolivar Live TV on Roku, Amazon Fire, and now you can watch it on our website. So if you have loved ones that don't like social media, don't want to have to register, you can always just go to youtube.com /the @ Bolivar Live. And so we're going to keep you updated today. And I pulled up the Bolivar Lighthouse page and was going to read a little bit about the lighthouse and it's a little bit of its history. The Bolivar Lighthouse is one of a few 19th century lighthouses remaining on the Gulf Coast and one of only two remaining iron lighthouses in Texas. Built in 1872, the Bolivar Point Lighthouse was first lighted November 19th, 1872, and operated until it was retired from service on May 29th, 1933. The light shined every night during its 60 years of service, except for two nights during the 1915 hurricane, which destroyed the oil house. So, and you can go to their website if you want to get more information. It should be in the write up. Let me find my phone and look. It should be in the write up that we did on the for this, and that way you can see exactly what the lighthouse is. On September 8th, 1900, during the deadliest natural disaster of U.S. history, the Galveston hurricane of 1900, the lighthouse withstood savage winds and safely harbored 125 refugees, many of whom had waded through waist-deep water to escape the rising storm surge that engulfed their train. The collected rainwater and survived on the limited food stuffs the keeper and his family had brought into the structure. The rest of the 85 passengers perished in the raging waters. 15 years later, in the hurricane of 1915, when winds reached 126 miles per hour, the lighthouse top swayed 12 inches side to side. 61 people took refuge inside its walls, sitting two to a step on the iron stairwell. The tower's vibration prevented the mechanical rotation of the lens, but the keeper turned it by hand until the oil supply washed away. Through the hurricane forced open the lighthouse doors, filling the base with 11 feet of storm surge and waves crashing against the walls. The lighthouse withstood the storm. On November 15th, 1917, the Bolivar Point Lighthouse was accidentally shelled by artillery fire from Fort San Jacinto. No one was injured, and again, the lighthouse survived. Hurricane Alicia hit in 1983, and Hurricane Ike hit in 2008. Ike ripped the final off the top and plunged it to the marsh. It was wiped out the brick kerosene house and other buildings on the ground. The water was over 8 feet deep and within 18 inches of coming in the houses. You can see the gouges in the iron supports of the assistant keeper's house. In 1933, at the peak of the Great Depression, the Bolivar Point Lighthouse was declared obsolete and its light was extinguished on May 29th, 1933. Since its auction in 1947, the Point Bolivar Lighthouse has been privately owned and maintained by descendants of E.V. Boyd and his sister, Ida Maxwell. The story of the Bolivar Point Lighthouse is one of courage, trauma, loneliness, peace, family, death, and staying power. It is a living piece of the history of Bolivar, a symbol of this community, and it's now a dire need of restoration. So this is straight off their website, and you can see the crane now reaching up more. Let me zoom out a little bit more. And we're having to use our feed from our camera, and so I'm going to be making some adjustments here and there so that we can get a better view of what's going on at the Point Bolivar Lighthouse as they take the top off. In fact, we've got Jeep weekend coming up this weekend, so I don't know if it has anything to do with it, but anyway, we're going to be covering this all day. I'll take a break here and there and put some music on, but we wanted everyone to see our icon of beauty and the first step in the rebuild of this piece of Texas history and really a lot of Bolivar history. So, like I said, please go to their website, BolivarPointLighthouse.org. If you can get more information, they've got a donate page where whether it's $1, $2, $5, $10, or $100, every little bit helps. And if you have a business that wants to get involved, please reach out to Amy and the board. They do have a board. The Bolivar Point Lighthouse is a 501c3. It's Texas-based nonprofit historic preservation organization dedicated to saving the 1872 Bolivar Point Lighthouse and sharing its legacy. So the website's got some neat information, some great videos, and more all in one location. So you can go there and get more information, maybe buy a t-shirt if you're come down here. And a great place to see this. In fact, the sunset behind it in the summertime is phenomenal, but there won't be any top on it for a while. So I noticed some people out this morning early were taking pictures. In fact, when we were getting the webcam up at Fort Travis this morning, I turned the video camera on, and we're actually filming this and doing a time lapse of this. And so pretty neat on the history of it. And I've always said, between the lighthouse and Fort Travis, this is an area you really need to visit if you're on the Texas Gulf Coast. And now you can watch it live. So I want to thank 110 Realty Group. Beth, when I was talking to her, I said, Beth, we may not be able to play your show on Monday because of the work at the lighthouse. And she said, no problem. She said, that's a piece of Texas history and a big part of Bolivar, and we need to let people know what's going on with it and how they can get involved in helping with the restoration project. So actually the crane was there a little bit earlier than what I expected this morning, and Sid gave me a call early and said, hey, the crane's here, and we're up about as far as we can go with the camera, and so we're not going to be able to zoom in all the way to the top, but we can get a pretty good view on what's going on when they start lifting it off and bringing it down to the ground. So it looks like the crane set up just back from the houses, or probably evenly in between the houses. I know they've got a bunch of gravel that they'd brought in there for parking, and so I'm sure that's where the crane set up. And so if you're in the area and you want to go set out, maybe take your lawn chair. The weather's beautiful today. In fact, I just walked out a little bit in front of the tourism center, and Beth was over at the title place, and she walked out, and I said, man, compared to the rain we've had the last couple days, it sure is pretty weather today. And she said, man, this is perfect. So anyway, we're going to go up a little bit and see what we can zoom in on, see how close we can get to the top of the lighthouse, and letting you see as they lift off the top. They've actually been working on this for several weeks now, building an internal structure, not only to lift the top dome and the window pane frames off, but they're also having to work underneath it to build structure to hold all the brick in place, because this is actually, in fact, I'm going to try and pull up a picture of the inside. Let me see if I can get to it and download we've actually got a drawing, and they've got it here, but let me see if I can get to a picture of the top and inside it. I didn't have anything pulled up, but they've got one here. Maybe I can get a screenshot of it and put it in the let's see here. Bear with me while they're doing this, or I'm doing this. See if I can find it where I just took a screenshot of it. There it is. I'm going to move it around a little bit and get it put on top. But let me see here. There, you ought to be able to see the inside, and I've adjusted it now so you can see exactly what it looks like inside. That's where they broke out a little bit, and look, and that's even, looks like it's even with that widow's walk around the top of it. And so that's a walkway around it. You can barely see it in the photo there. That you see, that white piece is probably the door, or it may be that where they broke out some of the brick, and you can see how the brick's laid in there on that. And so a lot of work has gone into this. They've had, structural people there. They've had engineers, historic, a gentleman that all he does is restoration on lighthouses and has done a lot of lighthouses, has been involved. In fact, Amy met him on a plane, from my understanding, whenever he was flying somewhere, and they hit it off, and he's been helping them a little bit. And so they've done a lot of fundraising to get to the point where they can actually do this. And so McMillan Home Builders, or Home Movers, is actually a local business here in Port Bolivar that has been taking care of all this. And then a lot of the boards involved with it. Amy, I know Sid's been down there daily, working with them on it, coming up with ideas, making brackets to hold things in, and deciding what they need to take off to get it to replace, so that it's safe. That was the biggest thing, is get the top down. And they're actually gonna have this top, and when it's all said and done, I don't know how soon, but they'll be able to have the top of the lighthouse on display. From my understanding, they bought a trailer that they're gonna mount it to, and be able to take it to different events around here and in Southeast Texas to show what it looks like and what they're having to do to rebuild it. So anyway, we're going to zoom back out a little bit and get back out. I saw the crane go up, and so we wanted to make sure that we did a swap over real quick. We don't want to be swapping feeds whenever they're actually taking the top off. And so there we'll zoom in a little bit. But the lighthouse is 119 feet tall, if I'm not mistaken. And so you can imagine how big the boom has to be. I don't think it's a weight issue for the top, but it is, or at least this first part, but it is a height problem. In fact, I was wondering if they were going to have to get a helicopter in to lift it off at one point, because I didn't know how tall they could get the crane without having to bring in one of those ones that they actually build and tie off. So anyway, I'm going to turn some music up, get me some coffee, and we'll be back here in just a little bit. But we're going to keep the feed going so you can enjoy the view of our upper Texas coast.